What happens when a Hollywood superstar walks into what should be a simple morning interview, only to find himself ambushed by a host who refuses to show basic respect? In just 46 seconds, everything explodes. Cameras keep rolling as one of America's biggest actors reaches his breaking point. And what unfolds next becomes one of the most shocking moments in morning television history. The Good Morning America studio felt different that morning. The usual buzz of excitement that comes with a major celebrity guest was there, but something else hung in the air. Mark Wahlberg had arrived early, gone through makeup, and settled into the interview chair with his usual professional demeanor. He had done this hundreds of times before. Talk shows were part of the job, part of promoting a new film, part of connecting with audiences across the country. Sam Champion sat across from him, shuffling his notes as the production crew made final adjustments to the lighting. Robin Roberts and George Stephanopoulos were positioned at the main desk, ready to join the conversation. The cameras began rolling, and the segment started innocently enough. "So, Mark, great to have you here," Sam began, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Let's talk about your new movie." "Thanks for having me," Mark replied, leaning back comfortably. "Yeah, we're really excited about this one. It's a story about redemption, about second chances, and I think audiences are going to connect with it." Sam nodded, but barely seemed to listen to the answer. "Interesting. So, redemption is a theme you're exploring. That must feel personal for you." There was something in the way Sam said it that made Mark pause. "Well, I think redemption is something everyone can relate to on some level. We've all made mistakes." Sure, Sam said, flipping through his notes in an exaggerated way. "But some mistakes are bigger than others, wouldn't you say?" Mark's expression remained neutral, professional. "Of course. The movie deals with some heavy themes, which is why I think it's important." "Heavy themes," Sam repeated, as if tasting the words. "You know what else is heavy? Your past, your history, the things you did before you became this big Hollywood star." Robin Roberts shifted uncomfortably at the main desk. She glanced at George, who was also picking up on the strange direction Sam was taking. "I've been very open about my past," Mark said carefully. "I've never hidden from it." "Open, yes," Sam agreed, but his tone suggested something else. "But open and accountable are two different things, aren't they?" "I'm not sure I understand where you're going with this," Mark said, his posture becoming slightly more rigid. "I'm just wondering," Sam continued, leaning forward slightly, "if someone with your history really deserves to be sitting here, promoting a movie about redemption, when some people might argue you haven't truly earned that. Redemption yourself." The temperature in the studio seemed to drop several degrees. Crew members exchanged nervous glances. This wasn't the pre-planned interview anyone had discussed. Mark took a slow breath. "Sam, I came here to talk about a film. If you have specific questions about my work or the project, I'm happy to answer them." "Oh, I have questions," Sam said. "I'm just trying to understand the disconnect. You play characters, you tell stories, but at the end of the day, you've got quite the story of your own. And I'm not sure it's one that ends with redemption." George Stephanopoulos cleared his throat loudly from the desk. "Sam, maybe we should focus on the actual film Mark is here to discuss." Sam barely glanced at George. "I am focusing on the film, George. It's about redemption. And I think our viewers deserve to understand whether the person delivering that message has any credibility." "Credibility?" Mark's voice remained calm, but gained an edge. "I've spent decades building a career, supporting causes I believe in, trying to be better than I was. What exactly are you questioning?" "I'm questioning," Sam said slowly, deliberately, "whether Hollywood just gives passes to people who make them money. Whether all of this, your career, your image, is just carefully constructed PR." Robin stood up from the main desk now. "Sam, this is inappropriate." Sam held up a hand dismissively toward Robin without even looking at her. "Let me do my job, Robin." "Your job is to interview him about his movie. not put him on trial, Robin said, her voice firm. Right, right. But what I really want to know is this. You've had quite the past, haven't you? Some would say you don't deserve the career you have. The studio went quiet. Even the crew members exchanged uncomfortable glances. Mark's expression shifted slightly, his jaw tightening, but he maintained his composure. I think everyone has a past, Sam. What matters is who you become and what you do with your second chance. Sure, Sam waved his hand dismissively. But let's be honest here. You've made millions, you live in mansions, and some people out there still remember the things you did as a kid. Don't you think that's a little unfair to them? Robin Roberts shifted in her seat at the main desk, clearly sensing the tension building. She tried to interject. Sam, maybe we could talk about the actual film. Sam ignored her completely, keeping his focus locked on Mark. I'm just asking what everyone wants to know. How does someone with your history get to be where you are? Mark took a breath, his hands gripping the armrests of his chair just a little tighter. Look, I've addressed my past many times. I was a kid who made terrible mistakes. I've spent decades trying to be a better person, trying to give back, trying to show through my actions who I really am. But is that enough? Sam pressed, leaning forward. Is saying sorry really enough when you've hurt people? What exactly are you trying to do here? Mark's voice remained steady, but grew colder. This was supposed to be about a movie. Sam smiled, but it wasn't friendly. It was the smile of someone who thought they had the upper hand. I'm doing journalism, Mark. Real questions, not the softball stuff you're used to. George Stephanopoulos spoke up from the desk. Sam, I think we should refocus this conversation. Again, Sam paid no attention to his colleagues. You know what I think? I think Hollywood gives passes to people like you because you make them money. That's really what this is about, isn't it? People like me? Mark repeated, his tone sharpening. What exactly do you mean by that? Oh, come on. You know what I mean. Bad boys who clean up just enough to be marketable. It's a formula. The atmosphere in the studio had become suffocating. Crew members stood frozen, unsure whether to keep filming or intervene. Robin Roberts looked genuinely distressed, and George had set down his papers, fully focused on the disaster unfolding before them. Mark's face had gone from patient to visibly angry. You don't know anything about me. You don't know the work I've put in, the people I've tried to help, the genuine effort I've made to be better. See, that's the thing, Sam continued, seemingly oblivious to or uncaring about the line he was crossing. You say all these nice things, but at the end of the day, you're still profiting from a past that hurt real people. And I think that's something we should talk about. You want to talk about hurting people? Mark's voice rose slightly. How about what you're doing right now? I came here in good faith to talk about a project I care about, and you're sitting here trying to tear me down for ratings. Sam laughed, actually laughed. Oh, so now I'm the bad guy? That's rich coming from someone with your record. What exactly is it you want from me? Mark asked, his patience clearly wearing thin. An apology? I've apologized. Acknowledgement? I've acknowledged everything. So what is this really about? It's about the fact that you get to sit here in expensive clothes, talking about your expensive movie, while the people you hurt are nowhere to be seen. That's what this is about. Mark leaned forward. You don't know anything about what I've done privately. You don't know about the conversations I've had, the amends I've tried to make. You're making assumptions based on nothing. I'm making observations based on facts, Sam countered. Facts that are public record. Facts from when I was a teenager, Mark said, his voice rising. Facts that I've spent my entire adult life trying to make up for. And you think that's enough? Sam pressed. You think time just erases everything? Robin Roberts stood up from the desk. Okay, Sam, that's enough. This has gone too far. Sam finally turned to look at Robin, his expression annoyed. I'm in the middle of an interview. This isn't an interview, Robin said firmly. This is an ambush, and it's not what we do here. Since when do we not ask hard questions? Sam shot back. There's a difference between hard questions and harassment, George added, also standing now. And you've crossed that line. Sam turned back to Mark, ignoring his colleagues. See what happens? The moment someone tries to hold you accountable, everyone rushes to your defense. Mark shook his head slowly. This isn't about accountability. If you wanted accountability, you would have asked me direct questions about specific things. Instead, you're making vague accusations and trying to paint me as some kind of villain. Aren't you, though? Sam asked. At least weren't you? I was a kid who made terrible mistakes, Mark said, his voice steady despite the anger clearly building inside him. I'm not that kid anymore, and the fact that you can't or won't see that says everything. No, let him continue, Mark said, his eyes never leaving Sam's face. I want everyone to see exactly what this is. What this is, Sam said, his voice dripping with condescension, is accountability. Something you seem allergic to. Accountability? Mark's voice was rising now, the anger he'd been holding back starting to break through. You want to talk about accountability? I've spent years owning what I did. Years. I've met with victims. I've apologized. I've put my money where my mouth is with community programs. What have you done besides sit in this chair and judge people? I'm a journalist, Sam shot back. It's my job to ask tough questions. No, Mark said firmly. There's a difference between tough questions and an ambush. There's a difference between journalism and whatever this is. George tried once more to intervene. Gentlemen, maybe we should take a break. But Sam wasn't finished. You know what your problem is, Mark. You think because you're famous, because you're rich, you should just get a free pass. You think you can walk in here and we'll all just kiss your feet and talk about how great you are. Mark stared at him for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but intense. Is that really what you think this is about? That's exactly what this is about. You celebrities are all the same. You want control of every narrative, every story. Well, not here. Not today. Control. Mark's hands gripped the chair arms so tightly his knuckles went white. You've done nothing but attack me from the second this interview started. You've ignored your own colleagues trying to steer this back to something reasonable. And you're talking to me about control? Sam leaned back in his chair, a smug expression on his face. Truth hurts, doesn't it? The truth. Mark's voice carried an edge of disbelief. You haven't been interested in truth this entire time. You've been interested in creating a spectacle. I've been interested in holding you accountable for things you've never really had to answer for, Sam said. Never had to answer for? Mark repeated, his voice rising. I've answered for them my entire career. Every interview, every profile, every time someone wants to write about me, it comes up. I don't run from it. I own it. But what you're doing isn't about accountability. It's about humiliation. If you feel humiliated, maybe that says something about you, Sam replied. Mark closed his eyes for a moment, clearly trying to maintain composure. When he opened them, there was something different in his expression. A decision had been made. You know what? Maybe it does say something about me. Maybe it says I still have enough shame about my past that attacks like this get under my skin. But you know what else it says? That I'm human. That I feel things. That I care about how I'm perceived and how my actions affected others. Lovely speech, Sam said dryly. Very moving. You really don't get it, do you? Mark said, almost to himself. You really think this is okay? I think doing real journalism is okay, yes, Sam said. This isn't journalism, Mark said firmly. And deep down, you know it. Sam's jaw tightened. Don't tell me what I know. Then tell me, Mark challenged. Tell me what journalistic purpose this served. What did you uncover? What new information did you bring to light? Or did you just want to make me uncomfortable on national television? Sam didn't answer immediately, And in that pause, everything shifted. That was the moment. That single comment was the spark that lit everything on fire. Mark stood up abruptly, his microphone pack nearly pulling out. "You know what? I'm done." "Oh, running away?" Sam taunted. "How surprising." "I'm not running from anything," Mark said, his voice carrying across the entire studio. "But I'm also not going to sit here and be disrespected by someone who clearly set this whole thing up to make himself feel important." "Set this up?" Sam's voice rose defensively. "I asked legitimate questions." "You asked gotcha questions designed to make me look bad," Mark corrected. "There's a difference, and everyone in this room knows it." Robin Roberts moved quickly toward them. "Mark, please, let's just take a moment." Mark looked at her, and his expression softened slightly. "Robin, with all respect, this wasn't a moment. This was planned. He had no intention of having a real conversation." "That's not true," Sam said, but his tone suggested otherwise. "I had every intention of having a real conversation. You're the one who couldn't handle it." "Couldn't handle it?" Mark turned back to Sam, his voice incredulous. "You think this is about me not being able to handle tough questions? I've done interviews with people who've grilled me on everything from acting choices to personal decisions to political views. I can handle tough questions. What I can't handle is someone who uses their platform to bully people." "I'm not a bully," Sam said quickly. "That's ridiculous." "Then what do you call this?" Mark gestured around the studio. "What do you call ignoring your colleagues, dismissing any attempt to have a balanced conversation, and repeatedly attacking someone who came here to do you a favor by appearing on your show?" "A favor?" Sam scoffed. "You're here to promote a movie. You need us as much as we need you." "Actually, I don't," Mark said quietly. "There are plenty of other shows, plenty of other platforms. I chose to come here because I thought it would be a good experience. I was wrong." "Really?" Sam said, but his voice had lost some of its confidence. "Then why didn't you ask me a single question about the movie? Why didn't you ask about the cast, the director, the message we're trying to share? Why was every single thing designed to put me on the defensive?" Sam opened his mouth to respond, but Mark held up his hand. "Don't bother. I already know the answer. You wanted a moment. You wanted to be the guy who took down Mark Wahlberg on live television. Well, congratulations. You got your moment. If you can't handle real questions, maybe you shouldn't do interviews," Sam said, his voice sharp. "Real questions?" Mark's voice rose again. "You want real questions? Ask me about my foundation. Ask me about the kids I mentor. Ask me about the scholarship programs I fund. Ask me about anything real instead of just trying to relitigate things I've already addressed 1,000 times." George Stephanopoulos had walked over now, standing between them. "Mark, I apologize for how this went." "It's not your apology I need, George," Mark said. "But I appreciate it." Sam scoffed. "This is unbelievable. You're all going to apologize to him?" Robin Roberts turned to Sam, her voice stern. "Sam, you were out of line. Way out of line." "I was doing my job," Sam insisted. "No," Mark said firmly. "You were being cruel. There's a difference. And honestly, the fact that you can't see that is the saddest part of all of this." Sam stood up now too, facing Mark directly. "You don't get to come into this studio and tell me how to do my job. And you don't get to invite someone onto your show just to humiliate them," Mark fired back. "That's not journalism. That's not even entertainment. It's just mean." Oh, poor Mark Wahlberg, getting asked tough questions. How will you ever survive? The sarcasm in Sam's voice was thick and ugly. Several crew members were now visibly uncomfortable, some looking away, others whispering to each other. Mark shook his head slowly. "You really don't get it. This isn't about me not being able to handle tough questions. I've answered tough questions from real journalists who actually cared about getting to the truth. This is about you using your platform to bully someone, Because you think it makes good television. I didn't bully anyone, Sam protested. Yes, you did, Robin said quietly. Sam, you really did. Sam looked at Robin, then at George, both of whom were clearly not on his side. His face reddened. This is ridiculous. If he can't take the heat, he should get out of the kitchen. I'm absolutely getting out of the kitchen, Mark said, beginning to remove his microphone. But not because I can't take the heat, because the chef is poisoning the food. Oh, that's a great line, Sam said mockingly. Did you rehearse that? You know what? Mark stopped and looked directly at Sam. I actually feel sorry for you. You had a chance to have a real conversation with someone, to actually connect with your audience by showing them something genuine. Instead, you chose this. You chose to be small and petty. And that says way more about you than it ever could about me. Sam's face went from red to almost purple. How dare you? How dare I what? Tell you the truth? That's rich coming from someone who spent the last 10 minutes attacking me in the name of truth. George put his hand on Mark's shoulder. Mark, I'm really sorry about this. This shouldn't have happened. Mark nodded at him. I know, George, and I appreciate you and Robin trying to step in, but I think it's pretty clear I'm not wanted here. You're absolutely wanted here, Robin said quickly. Just not like this. She's right, George added. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. Sam crossed his arms. So everyone's just going to gang up on me now. Perfect. No one's ganging up on you, Mark said, his voice tired now. But you need to hear that what you did was wrong. And if you can't hear it from your colleagues, I don't know what to tell you. I don't need to hear anything from you, Sam snapped. Mark finished removing his microphone and handed it to a nearby production assistant. You're right. You don't. Because I'm leaving. Good, Sam said. Don't let the door hit you on the way out. Robin gasped. Sam, what is wrong with you? Mark held up his hand again, stopping Robin from continuing. It's okay. Let him show everyone exactly who he is. He turned and began walking toward the exit. The studio was completely silent except for his footsteps. Every eye was on him, on Sam, on the catastrophic wreckage of what should have been a routine interview. Just before he reached the door, Mark stopped and turned back one last time. You know, Sam, I came here today ready to talk about a movie that means a lot to me. A movie about redemption and second chances, and you turned it into this. I hope whatever you were trying to prove was worth it. It was, Sam said defiantly, though his voice wavered slightly. Mark nodded slowly. Then I really do feel sorry for you. With that, he walked out. The heavy studio door closed behind him with a solid thunk that seemed to echo forever. For a moment, no one moved. The cameras were still rolling, capturing every second of the aftermath. Sam stood in the interview area, his arms still crossed, his expression defiant, but something else flickering in his eyes. Doubt, maybe, or the first hints of realization about what he had just done. The silence stretched on, heavy and uncomfortable. Production assistants looked at each other, unsure whether to start breaking down the set or wait for direction. The camera operators kept their equipment trained on the scene, documenting everything. Robin Roberts was the first to move. She walked up to Sam, her face a mixture of disappointment and anger. That was unacceptable, she said quietly but firmly. Completely unacceptable. I was just doing my job, Sam repeated, but the conviction in his voice was gone. No, Robin said, shaking her head. That wasn't your job. Your job was to have a conversation, to help our viewers learn about a new film, to engage with a guest in a meaningful way. What you did was none of those things. I asked him about his past, Sam said weakly. People care about that. People do care about it, George said, joining them. But there's a way to address those topics with respect and nuance. What you did had neither. So, "You're both on his side," Sam asked, looking between his colleagues. "This isn't about sides," Robin said, her voice firm but not unkind. "This is about how we treat people. This is about the standards we hold ourselves to as journalists and as human beings." "He could have handled it better too," Sam said defensively. George shook his head. "Sam, he was remarkably restrained given what you were doing. Most people would have walked out much sooner." "So what? I'm just supposed to throw softball questions at celebrities and let them control the narrative?" Sam's voice rose slightly. "No," Robin said. "You're supposed to prepare thoughtful questions, create space for honest dialogue, and treat your guests with basic dignity. That's not throwing softballs. That's being professional." Sam looked away, his jaw working as he processed their words. "We're going to have to go to commercial," Robin said to one of the producers. "And then we need to figure out how to address this." The producer nodded quickly and signaled to the control room. Within seconds, the show cut away. In the studio, the silence was deafening. Sam sank back into his chair, his defiance finally cracking. Robin and George exchanged looks, both of them clearly shaken by what had just transpired. "I thought," Sam started, then stopped. His hands were shaking slightly. "I thought I was doing the right thing." "How?" Robin asked, not unkindly, but genuinely confused. "How did you think any of that was right?" Sam stared at his hands. I thought people wanted to see someone actually challenge him. I thought they were tired of celebrities getting easy treatment." "There's a difference between challenging someone and attacking them," George said. "You have to know that." "I do know that," Sam said quietly. "Or I should. I got caught up in the moment, in wanting to be the one who didn't back down." "But at what cost?" Robin asked. "At the cost of your integrity? Our show's reputation? That man's dignity?" Sam didn't answer. He couldn't. Because somewhere deep down, beneath the ego and the desire for a big moment, he knew. He had gone too far. He had taken a professional interview and turned it into a personal attack. And now, with Mark Wahlberg gone and his colleagues staring at him with disappointment, he had to face what he had done. George shook his head. "We're going to have to make a statement about this." "I know," Robin said quietly. "And it's going to have to address what happened directly. We can't sweep this under the rug." "Should I?" Sam began, then paused. "Should I be the one to apologize on air?" Robin and George looked at each other, having a silent conversation with their eyes. "I think," George said carefully, "we need to talk to the producers and legal before we decide how to handle this publicly. But yes, you're going to need to take responsibility for what happened here." Sam nodded slowly, the weight of the situation finally settling on his shoulders. They both looked at Sam, waiting for him to say something, to acknowledge the disaster he had created. But he just sat there, staring at the empty chair where Mark had been sitting minutes before. The camera operators began powering down their equipment. The lighting team started adjusting things for the next segment. Life on the show was moving forward, but everyone in that studio knew that something had fundamentally changed. This wasn't just a bad interview. This was a moment that revealed something ugly, something that had been hiding beneath the surface of polite morning television. And Mark Wahlberg, in choosing to walk away rather than escalate further, had somehow emerged from the wreckage with his dignity intact. Sam Champion sat alone in the interview area, surrounded by people but completely isolated. His big moment had arrived, just not in the way he had imagined. Instead of being the journalist who held a celebrity accountable, he had become the cautionary tale about what happens when ambition and ego override basic human decency. Robin placed a hand on George's arm. "We need to call Mark's team." "Already on it," George said, pulling out his phone. As they walked away to handle the crisis, Sam remained seated. The studio lights felt harsh now, exposing rather than flattering. The chair across from him sat empty, a physical reminder of the moment everything fell apart. A production assistant approached tentatively. "Sam, they need you off set. We have to reset for the next segment." Sam nodded, but didn't move immediately. He was still processing, still trying to understand how an interview he had planned so carefully had spiraled so completely out of control. Finally, he stood and walked toward the wings. Behind him, the crew worked efficiently to transform the space, to erase the physical evidence of what had happened. But erasing the memory, erasing the damage, would be far more difficult. The empty studio seemed to hold its breath, waiting to see what would come next.